Welcome to the Desperately Seeking Self podcast, the show that helps you up your confidence game so you stop settling for less than you deserve. I'm your host, Brooke Collins, speaker, life coach, women's empowerment enthusiast, and the best friend you never knew you needed. Are you ready? Let's get started. And Michelle Anhang, welcome to the Desperately Seeking Self podcast. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
And we're going to talk today about believing that we deserve better.
Yes.
Yeah. So you have a very, very interesting past, but your past has sort of propelled you into what you're doing today, which is great for everyone listening because it shows that no matter what you go through in life, no matter what you come up against, you can come out the other side and shine and have confidence and get what you deserve and stop settling for less than you deserve, right?
Absolutely.
So I know that you deal with coaching with grief and shame and mental health, but why don't you give me your story a little bit and tell us, enlighten us on how you came to be the fabulous coach that you are today.
Oh, thank you. Okay. Well, I guess if we're talking about believing that we deserve better or what we believe that we deserve for ourselves, then I need to go way, way back to the beginning of my time. And just starting with my childhood. So I grew up in a home where I was kind of, I was put down a lot. I was told, that, instead of making mistakes, I made stupid mistakes. I was, told constantly that my mom wanted to go to law school, but then she had me. Like she had me at 21, and I'm assuming I was not planned. And it seems that I put a damper in her life plan. So I kind of grew up believing that, I'm a mistake, I'm flawed. I, don't deserve a whole lot. I shouldn't ask for anything because, I already maybe shouldn't even be here kind of thing. And so I carried that belief and that low sense of self-worth, and that I really had very little, if any, value with me my whole life. And like many of us who have those beliefs, we tend to draw people and situations towards ourselves that perpetuate that same belief. So that's what I did. And I got married young. I got married at 22. And yeah, a baby. And my husband and I knew each other since we were little, since we were about 8. We grew up in a small, pretty tight community at the time, and started dating when we were 18. And so yes, 4 years later seemed like the thing to do. And while he was my best friend and he was really good to me, he was suffering from mental illness, and we didn't know until maybe close to 10 years into our marriage, 2 kids later. That's when we finally got the diagnosis. He had bipolar disorder, he had schizophrenia, or a form of it. And sadly, he died by suicide almost 15 years ago. And so even, around his mental illness, it was, there was a lot that was hidden, that, again, the stories, the stigma, the shame. And, this was a place that I lived in. I often talk about how, I would carry my backpack of shame, and it was just because, it was just too much to carry inside. It was overflowing. So I had the backpack, and then anybody else had shame, here, give it to me, I'll carry it for you. So with my husband's illness and, what was going on with him, it was like, okay, we're not going to talk about it. He had to stop working because he was sick. And same thing, we kept it a secret. And then when he died, the family, who also, had a lot of shame around the mental illness and suicide, also, somebody had said to me, what are we going to tell people? Like, this conversation came up, a few hours after we got the news that he passed away. And of course, being in the headspace that I was in, it was like, oh yeah, how is this somehow my fault? Like, you know, and I had that, of course I had that story I was just telling you, that like I somehow ruined my mother's life. So then it was like, oh, how did I ruin his life? Where did I go wrong? What did I, you know, was I managing his medication okay? Did I love him enough? Like, you know, what could I have done? Then it was just like, yeah, let's say that it was an accident. That's what we decided. And so, yeah. So we told that lie for more than 10 years.
That's
And
incredible.
yeah.
That's incredible. And I'll tell you, because this story, your story, even though totally different scenarios, it's ironically similar to mine. Because while my parents didn't put their life on hold for me, or because they chose to have me, but my sister got a juvenile pediatric like bone cancer, and a rare one. And I always felt like I couldn't, or I shouldn't be asking for anything, or I didn't deserve, you know, anything, because I wasn't fighting for my life in a hospital bed.
Right.
And I really felt I couldn't discuss like the normal kid problems that I was having in 5th, 6th, 7th grade. Like I never thought that I could go to them, and I didn't want to bother them. You know, like I didn't have anything serious enough to really bother them. So I grew up married young. I married at 23, so not much older than you. But I look back now at 40 and I'm like, God, what was I? I thought I was looking back, I was an infant. I mean, I can't believe, you know, that I was like, yeah, let's do it. Like blindly, you know, just jumping in.
Yeah.
But my ex-husband was bipolar and got diagnosed during the first, I'd say 4 years of our marriage.
Oh, wow.
The mania started kicking in, and the paranoia, and then the lows were really low, and he could never hold a job ever. But he wouldn't even let me manage his meds. So it's interesting that you said, did I manage his meds?
Yeah.
Because I had offered that up for suggestion multiple times, because he liked to self-medicate with drugs and alcohol, which is very common with bipolar disorder. And it's, you know, that's just the nature of the beast, I guess. Yeah. But it's, so this idea that we shouldn't ask for anything. So when you feel like in childhood that you can't ask for anything, or you're ashamed of who you are, or how you operate, then you go into these relationships where, you know, you end up being with someone who has so much going on that there again, you're on the back burner. You're not as important. You don't need, you know, well, he needs me, so I don't need to put my needs front and center, which is a shame. But I think it's sort of, do you think it kind of goes along with you're hiding behind it too, because it allows you to stay in that space?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Cause you don't need to face your truths when you're too busy trying to keep somebody who's sick alive.
Yeah.
You know, it's a great excuse. And, you know, just to touch on too, what you were saying about not managing his medication, I wasn't doing it from a healthy place either. It was complete codependency and that sense of control of that, you know, again, like, give me something to do, give me some kind of role. I'm completely empty. And so I need to fill myself with your stuff, because I don't even know where to start with, because like, I don't deserve it. I should just be happy I'm married to a man who loves me, even though, you know, financially it was destroying us, emotionally it was destroying me, well, him too, you know, and so I was completely immersed in his life and taking care of our kids and working 2 jobs. And so all of this filled the space and the time to fill the emptiness that I felt. And I completely perpetuated that throughout.
Isn't it so, I can like feel it's so overwhelming to even think about some of the things we do to survive in the moment. But you think about 2 kids, mentally ill husband, 2 jobs, you know, that's like exhausting to even like try and like think about,
right?
Let alone actually like doing it.
Totally.
But it is a way of distracting ourselves. And when you look at self-care and shame, like if you're doing all that to like fill an empty space, how do you how did you come out of that or break free
Mm.
from that?
Yeah. Well, it continued over those 10 years of the whole, accepting less than I deserved or telling myself I should just be grateful for what I have. Career wise, I was in a job, I worked in the corporate world where it was also just like, you know, driving you home,
Yeah.
like really like, a recipe for burnout. And it also just like, I'm a coach now, I should not have been in finance punching numbers 8 hours a day and
No.
then leaving at 5 and then getting guilted that like, oh, how nice you're leaving at 5 while we're all staying. And it's like, yeah, but I'm a single mom and I have to, like, I'm an only parent, I have to take care of my kids. But then in my head saying like, well, you should be grateful that you have job security and it pays your bills and it's giving you a comfortable life and you can pay for stuff for your kids, you can support them. So, the whole idea of like, don't not daring to dream. Like I didn't, it was just like, don't think about like, it felt selfish. It was like, it was not, I felt like my life was not supposed to be about what I want. It was really supposed to, this is the story I told myself, that it was really
Right.
about how I'm taking care of everyone else and filling whatever their voids are. And, so yeah, just perpetuating that. So here I am 10 years into this career of, in the wrong place, and one relationship after the next that was so unhealthy, because of course I was unhealthy, so I was
Yeah.
not attracting healthy people. And so for me, really, like the catalyst was a relationship, like the relationship I was in at the time, it was my 45th birthday too. And so, going through midlife crisis or awakening, whichever way you want to look at it, of just saying like, wow, I've been in so much pain for the first half of my life. I'm not going to live longer if I have to do this for another 45 years. And that particular relationship was the unhealthiest relationship I was in. Like none of the other ones were great, I'll be
Right.
honest. But this one was really, it was somebody who was also dealing with his own shame that he was keeping hidden, and he wasn't ready to face it. So it was all put on me that, and again, same story. It's all your fault. You had a messed up childhood. And he knew the truth about what happened with my husband. So it was like, your life was messed up and you're bringing your toxicity to our relationship and it's all your fault. And it's like, well, don't they say it takes two to tango? And it's like, no, it's you.
Yeah.
And so being constantly told that and constantly shamed in this relationship, and, being compared to other women that had been in his life that, were that much better. And I was like, yeah, but you're not with them now. But,
Right.
the argument didn't even matter. And I wasn't bringing it up because I was just like, well, I should be happy that this guy says he loves me and wants to be with me. So again, just settling for like on every single level for less than I know that I deserve. So yeah, finally reaching that point where I was just like, oh my God, I'm crying every single day and I
Oh
can't
God.
do this. And, I finally had that epiphany of like, oh, it's me. Like I am the problem here because I am perpetuating this same story. And, as devastating as it was also empowering because it was like, you know what, I don't need to stay in this relationship and be shamed.
Yeah.
I have choices. I mean, I was nowhere near there, but I knew that like, okay, I can do the work to heal me because, this guy and I had been in couples therapy. I was seeing a therapist, like, yeah, it was, and it was not going anywhere. And, so yeah, just realizing, you know what, I can fix me and I can change something. I don't know what it's going to look like, but I know that I have the power to do it. And I was so determined at that point. I was just like, I can't be in this much pain anymore. So I went back to therapy. I mean, I've been in and out for many years, as you can probably imagine, like most of my adult life, and I love therapy. But just saying, okay, this time I'm doing a deep dive, and I'm changing things, because there's just no way to continue like this anymore.
I love that you said you knew that you had choices. So you actively, the change was like it was starting to get momentum, I guess,
Yeah.
because people don't realize when they're in those situations. And I'll just point out, you could have just stayed there. You could still be with that man today, like miserable, crying every day. Life is not meant to be lived like that. And it's
Yeah.
when you take responsibility for what you can do for yourself, that to me is the most empowering thing that can happen to a person, when you realize that
Yeah.
you do have choices and you can heal yourself from the inside out. And if the chaos around you follows you and rises up to your level, fine. But if not, like, it's the gift of desperation, almost like I'm willing to
Oh,
lose
yeah.
everything to stop feeling the way that I'm feeling every day.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, it's so true. And I, like, people say, like, was this your rock bottom? And it's like, you know what, I had so many rock bottoms that, like, I had a really really high tolerance for what rock bottom could look like. So, but yes, this was one of them. And it was just, it got to the point where it was like, yeah, there has to be something different. And knowing that I had choices didn't mean that I knew what those choices were.
Right.
I had no idea. But I just knew that there's got to be something different than this. And you see, like, you hear about people and you hear inspiring stories, and you're like, okay, they did it, how? And and I think part of it too is when we don't believe we deserve anything, we don't ask for help, because we don't, like, either we think we're not going to get it, or the people won't give it to us, or that we don't deserve it. And so we try to do so much of it alone. And that was me. I was very much, isolated. And I admit I isolated myself. And, like, even when I went to therapy, I was selective about what I talked about. With this relationship, it was only after a certain period of time that I started opening up to what was really going on. And my therapist is like, oh my gosh, like, this is emotional abuse. Like, he's gaslighting you. Like, I would tell her, like, scenarios, and I'm like, oh, like, I know when I've been gaslit in other situations, but
I couldn't see
and
it.
it was right. And so I needed somebody else to mirror back to me what was actually happening, and and their acceptance as well, starting with a therapist and then later moving out into other areas of my life. But we need the support from other people, and healthy people, to help build, put ourselves back together again, essentially.
Yeah, it's that's a lot of trauma to tolerate for 45 years,
Yeah.
because each relationship unhealthy. The relationship with your mom is probably not, we haven't really touched on it, probably not the best. Probably a lot
No.
of resentment and
Yeah.
stuff happening there for you, and needs to be healed and worked on, right? So
Yeah.
there's just, it's almost like from the pain point from such a young age, that trauma is just stuck. And so, how did you decide to, like, was it with the therapist to focus on the trauma, or did you use different modalities, or?
Yeah, I did use different modalities. It started out with talk therapy first. I just, kind of needed to, as I, like, just vomit out,
Word
like,
vomit. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
like, this is what is happening to me. This is where I am. I needed to do a lot of crying, a lot of healing, and just where you're saying you don't know my relationship with my mother. So we've been estranged for 25 years. I've been estranged from my family because as I started to move out, even in my 20s, when I got married and I was like, okay, I'm not living in your house anymore. I don't need to live by your rules. Then they didn't want anything to do with me. And because I was living my life, well, what they and I thought was my way, even though it was really not. It was
Right.
just a different way than what I had grown up with. And so, yeah, there was a lot of healing I needed to do first around that before even moving forward. So, yeah, that first therapist was amazing in the sense of just working through a lot of my childhood stories and what happened to me, grieving the loss of, the childhood I didn't have, the parents that I didn't get to have, that unconditional love that I didn't even know really could exist, other than, I mean, I had children and I knew what I could give my kids, but not knowing what it looked like receiving it. And, the concept of even not believing that I was worthy of receiving it from somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so many of us go into these unhealthy relationships because we know subconsciously that person can't give us what we need.
Right.
Because we also don't know how to take it. We can't take it in.
Well, yeah, you won't receive it. It's like
Mhm.
you have like Teflon. You're just going to
Right.
repel anything that comes close
Yeah.
to what unconditional love
Yeah.
looks like. Nope.
Yeah.
Not comfortable there.
Well, and that's the funny thing. It's like, I remember going on dates with like really nice guys, and I would just judge them as boring because I only knew drama and toxicity. Like
Yep.
these poor guys who probably could have given me, what I really needed and what was healthy, but I didn't recognize what it was. I just thought, okay, it's boring unless you've had as dark a life as I have, you're not going to get me.
Right. There's got to be some type of something traumatic that's happened to you for you to be around me.
Yeah.
It's so interesting too, the boring guy. Like I never talk to nice guys. In fact, my husband is a nice guy and I liked him, but I didn't think I deserved that. I didn't think I deserved someone that was like so stable, like so,
Right.
Just consistent with his actions. And it took a while to like really like, thank God he didn't give up on me, because it took a while to allow myself to even receive, the love that he gives and the stuff that he provides for us. So it's so weird how we do like subconsciously just like get away, like unless you're gonna have ups and downs and keep me codependent and moving down a spiral, I want nothing to do with you.
Yeah.
Tragic.
It really is. And I see it as, particularly with this last relationship that I was in, realizing that the bond that we had was a trauma bond. It wasn't love. And a trauma bond is not going to go anywhere good.
No.
Really, you're bringing out the worst in each other. And and that's what happened. So essentially it was, he projected a lot because that was his trauma response, and mine was to curl up into a ball and take it all and just cry. And so that was, it was a year and a half of that.
Wow.
And so much pain, because it was confusing for me too, because other relationships where they had their own stuff, they generally couldn't commit. So it was like, yes, I attracted them because subconsciously, because I knew that it was never going to be something where I needed to be vulnerable or
right.
But then I knew I could predict the ending. Like, okay, at some point they're just going to be like, yeah, I can't be in a commitment, and they'd leave, and then I'd cry and pretend that I didn't see it coming.
Right.
Because we do that. And so with this relationship, it was really confusing because he, gave me a key to his place within the first few months, and then he, then he's talking about like, okay, well, maybe after, in 6 months we can talk about moving in together. And so like this guy, like, I was like, wow, he's here, he's not going anywhere. And so it was confusing for me, and I didn't know what to do with it. But in his own way, like, yes, he's giving me the key and we were talking about moving in together, but then he was pushing me away in other ways. And so that really messed me up a lot.
Well, in a lot of ways, a lot of people don't recognize, but that's almost like a way of like keeping you captive, like for a woman, like to get the keys and to feel that commitment and like be like, oh, wow, someone's actually, it's like a way to imprison a woman who feels like she's not deserving of any of that.
Oh yeah, completely. And it's like dangle, like it's crumbs. It's just
Yep.
giving somebody the crumbs and you're waiting for like the cookie. The cookie never comes. And it was a mix of that, of just like, okay, let's combine the families, let's do holidays together. And he has a child as well. And so, setting up a room in my house, like, my office became the child's room so that we could all have sleep. Oh yeah. Like, cause I'm like, wow, okay, we're moving into something real. And at the same time, he's saying to me, well, I can't stop thinking about this ex of mine. And when we're not together, I'm thinking about her. So then making, just dredging up my insecurity.
Yeah.
Right.
Like trying to like let you know, like, so I've got someone on the back burner.
Right. Yeah.
And you mess up, there's someone waiting in the wings.
Right. Yeah. So then of course my instinct was, well, then I better try harder and show that I really am lovable. Oh yeah.
Sorry, Dion. Yeah.
No, that's okay. It's so it's just this vicious spiral that we go into.
So exhausting.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
like my body's like repelling. Like I'm like,
right.
Oh my God, I'm getting I feel like I could crash, because that's exactly that type of gaslighting, or that type of, oh, I've got this happening, and then you believe it, and then you are like, well, what can I do to fix this? Right. How am I going to be perfect? I've got to be perfect. And you could be Martha Stewart and Beyonce and, name any porn star insert, and you still would never be perfect for that man. Like that's just such a toxic, textbook, trauma bond relationship.
Yes. Oh yeah, totally. And then of course, like the whole thing about deserving and my worth and all of that like I now subconsciously feel that I need to be the best girlfriend in the world so that I will be chosen, because if he chooses me, that will prove my value. Mm-hmm. And, so it's amazing the places that we go in our minds of like, what we think we need to do. And, never. And I remember like my therapist at one point saying to me, like, you keep giving away your power to this guy. And I said to her, I know the term giving away your power, but honestly, I don't know what the hell it means.
Right.
Like I was just like, what power? Like, I have power? Like, it was really like, where is it? Yeah.
No, because it's like, you don't recognize how it's like insidious, the way that they creep into your mind and your brain, and the way that you start to think about how to hold on to this bullshit. Like, I just remember my ex-husband at one point when he would be drinking, like I became like a super sleuth, like a detective. So this was back in the days when like you would get a cell phone bill and you could see the text, like the SMS text messages too. It was like brand new. You could see what number and how many times. And even on the call, like it would come in like line by line, old school phone bills. So I would like go and like find and highlight, and then to figure out, I was able to find like half these girls that he would connect with at the bar. And it was like, I had to weed them out because I was going to win, and it's like, win what? Like, you're the one that's tied down with a kid and home with the kid, and you're not winning what you're winning him. You're winning, like, what are you winning? And I couldn't figure out like what I was winning, but I was sure as hell competitive about it, like trying to be the winner. So I can still vividly remember, when we were getting divorced, he had started dating someone in, it was that I vividly remember when I released, I took my power back, and I was like, you know what? I'm not fighting for him. She had contacted me because he was in jail or something. And I was like was going to give her the whole downplay of like, I'd run. In fact, I think I said I'd run. He's really not a good dude, but you do what you want, you know?
Yeah.
And I just let go and like, here, you can have him. If you want to fight for him, please do take him. And she did. And, you know, another decade later in her divorce, she was horrified of what she won. You know what I mean?
Right,
So it's like
right.
this, you know, these men don't change if they're not
Yeah.
willing to work on themselves.
Yeah.
Just like a toxic woman, I'm not bashing on men. If people with that kind of trauma and that kind of shame and lack of respect for themselves, will do this to every single person. I just call it like suckering. Like they're like con artists, like dangle, dangle, dangle. I'm going to reel you in.
Yes.
Here's the key to my apartment. Here's some crumbs about getting married. Here we'll go look at rings. Here we'll go do this. And then it's just like reeling you in. And then there's no action. So one of the first things that I did when I took my power back was I started saying, like, I don't believe a word that anybody says anymore. If I don't see an action, you're gone. You're getting cut out. Like, and I was like cutthroat, like with my friends, like, sorry, you said you were going to do this. You're out. Like, I really started looking at people from a place of, anybody can say anything. My ex-husband told me for an entire decade, a bunch of promises, empty promises that never had any completion to them. You know, they never came to fruition. So I think that it's just so awesome when somebody realizes that they can take their power back. Once they realize what it is and like, it's like, when I say in prison, like I picture, you know, like they have their hand around your neck. It's invisible, but it's there all the time. And it's like, finally you're able to like, at least you don't get better overnight, obviously, but you're able to like move to a new space where you are like, I don't think so. I'm going to do this.
Or even just questioning it. Like,
because that's huge.
Yeah.
I mean, in my story, I can remember like you went and did like word vomit with your therapist. I can remember my mom and I and a girlfriend of mine, we would walk every day for like an hour and a half when I was contemplating leaving and all those things. And I like talking circles, just blah, blah, like everything was just coming. Like I couldn't suppress any of the things that had happened in our marriage and to me by him anymore. It was like 3 months of like these daily things, just like getting it out. And then finally I was ready to walk away because I had released everything I was afraid that, you know, he would hold things over me. Like, I'm going to tell people that you know, bop. And it's like, I was so terrified. What? Like, nobody's going to buy your shit, but you can't see that when you're in it, you know?
Yeah, no, completely. And, you know, there's a piece too that, you know, it takes two to tango. Like, you know, healthy people are not attracted to people like that. Like they need us toxic girls who are unhealthy, who have no self-worth, that will put up with that will hear comments like that, or, you know, any of the things that we experience. And, you know, any women that are listening, we are all like, we know our stories, but they need that for their stuff to perpetuate too.
It's oxygen to them. It's oxygen.
Yeah. So until like, we can't break the pattern until we ourselves get healthy and work through our own stuff. And, you know, same way, like, you know, we're attracting them, they're attracting us. We need each other until finally somebody just gets, you know, and Elizabeth Gilbert has a great quote that I'm going to say it wrong, and I apologize, Liz Gilbert, if you're listening, but it's something about like, I've never seen a transformation that happened like that, where the person in question didn't get tired of their own bullshit.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, that you have to get sick of your own bullshit before you're going to make any kind of change.
Yeah.
And that, so that's where it starts. And for me, I would love to say I took my power back in this relationship. I did not. You know, I broke up with him because he was going away for a weekend, gave me a whole story about how it was supposed to be alone time with his child. Turns out that he was taking his child, but going to visit an ex-girlfriend, a different one. So I broke up with him, and then we were apart for a month. And during that time, he went to visit, like left the country to visit the girlfriend he told me he was still pining over, and had hooked up with another woman, and then came back to me, and I took him back, even though I hated him. And then he broke up with me a month later because, well, it's been a whole month and you're not over it yet. And yeah. And I actually thanked him at that point. I was just like, thank you so much for breaking up with me, because I never would have done it. I would have kept going. So that really was the greatest gift. And, to go back to a way earlier question of yours of the therapy that I did. So yes, in addition to the talk therapy, once I had gotten all this out, did a lot of the grieving and the talking, I did trauma therapy. I did EMDR. I did a form of somatic work, because our trauma is stored in our bodies. So it's called Rolfing, that releases trauma from your fascia. And so I was doing all of this, like I was working with 3 different therapists a week.
Wow.
So yeah, like I don't recommend that for everybody, but like I said, I was just like, I will do whatever the hell it takes, just no more of this, please. Yeah. And so yeah, I was going from one to the next, and like whatever would come up with one, I'd share with the next, and we'd keep building. And that's where I realized, once I could work through that trauma, then I saw like, oh, I have power. I can say no. And, we have this story of like, where we think it's the nice guy. And like, if you say no to them, oh, well, what if he was the one?
Right. Yeah.
And it's like, actually, you know what? I'm okay to take that chance.
Yeah.
And being okay with making these choices and living with the consequences and learning that I will be okay no matter what. And it takes a long time to get to that place. But the truth is, those of us who've experienced trauma, and particularly those of us that have like experiences like you and I, we're really resilient people. I mean, look at the crap we put ourselves through. We're tough. Like most people that, if somebody's listening to this that has not gone through it, like they'd be like, oh my God. So recognizing that piece of like, okay, I put up with a lot of shit, I can deal with it. Yeah. And knowing that like, okay, I can take whatever comes my way, because the truth is I'm choosing not to talk to accept toxicity anymore. So anything less than that, that's, a walk in the park.
Yeah, no, it is. And I think I did EMDR, and I've always wanted to do somatic, like that therapy, because I feel like there is still some triggers for some stuff. But I'll tell you, for anyone out there that is struggling with trauma, I did EMDR. My husband he's a therapist. So that's his profession. He's not mine, never was mine, but I did EMDR. I told him I was thinking about doing it. And he said, well, yeah, it's got, if you're committed to it, we have someone at my practice that has it, or he gave me like 4 other people in our local area that he knew had been really well reviewed and colleagues liked him or whatever. So I never told him that I booked an appointment. I never told him that I followed through with it. I just had the discussion that I'm going to do. I'm thinking about it. Mm-hmm. And so I went and did on the very first session of EMDR. And I said, I really want to, the first thing I want to work on is not being so guarded with my husband, right? Like I said, because he'll come at me in the kitchen to give me a hug, and I'm like, whoa, I got it. Like, I'm good. I don't need a hug, or, like all of these old like blocks that I can't move past, but I definitely don't want to hurt his feelings, or when something's wrong with me and I'm crying and he has to be like, I'm gonna hug you now. I mean, because I was abused. I mean, I was abused by my ex-husband. So there is a lot of trauma with that. Sure. But, I didn't want my husband to have to ask me permission to hug me anymore. Sure. Like, it was really starting to bother me that's how I was reacting inside and externally with him. So I do the one session of EMDR, and 2 days later, he says, what's going on with you? And I'm like, what are you talking about? And he's like, did you get like a script for like Xanax or so? He's like, what is going on with you? And I'm like, I don't know. What are you referring to? And he's like, I don't know. It feels like you're very attached to me. Like, I mean, I was like really like my norm, because my nature is I'm very touchy, like even with my kids, like I like to hug and kiss. And so he's like, you just seem like you're very attached to me. And then within like a minute, he's like, oh my God, did you do the EMDR? Did you book an appointment? And I was like, yeah, I had it like a couple days ago. And he was like, and he said, was it like, was it Thursday? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, oh my God. Like, I mean, he was mind blown. And the man goes to seminars, like, workshops, like knows all about it. And he was like, I can't believe that one session of that, you're like completely altered for the way that I wanted to be, obviously, but like, for good ways. So I tell everybody, if any of my clients, even, I'm like, if you really want to break free from trauma, I highly suggest doing your research and getting someone who is highly rated, but without a doubt, that has helped me. But now I'm doing The Body Keeps Score. I don't know if you've read that book, because I can still feel it sometimes. It's in my body, and no matter, I can, Reiki gets it out a little with my massage therapist. He's a Reiki master too, so I get like both at the same time in the same appointment, I should say. But I really like that shaking. To me, that is like so profound. I mean, did that do a lot for you?
So rolfing is different because it's kind of like a form of massage. So fascia is essentially like what encases our body. It keeps, the veins and the
everything
organs
intact,
and all that together, right? And our muscles. And so often, when we think we have muscle pain, it could be trauma and the fascia that's tightened and putting pressure on the muscle, but the muscle itself is fine. So it feels like they just stretch it out and it's permanent. So it feels like a massage because it's kind of like a plasticky material, but it's permanent.
Okay.
So doing that, memories were popping up of just like the weirdest stuff. So one example is, so I have chronic pain on my left side, like my shoulder and my neck, and
that's right.
Control,
it.
Yeah.
Masculine, feminine, got it.
Right. Yes. So we knew that going into this side was going to be painful and it was going to be tight. And so, we did, and she's like, okay, as expected. And she goes over to the other side and she's like, oh, it's so funny. Like as she's working, she goes, this side is actually tighter than your left side. And all of a sudden I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense because I'm a lefty and my mom used to make me practice writing with my right hand. And I remember at 6 years old thinking, maybe if I can change, my mom will love me. Yeah. And that came out in the session. And then of course, like I go to EMDR and work through that. And yes, my experience, I did 6 months of it working like way back to like childhood memories. Oh my God, changed everything. Like where I used to be super reactive and like highly triggered. Now it's like, whatever. I still have stuff because, it took, close to 50 years to develop all of it. It's not going to go away overnight, but yeah, it was just amazing the things that came up. And then it's like, okay, now I can go work through those thoughts and the EMDR through the talk therapy. And, what you're talking about, like with the somatic experiencing, I actually, I'm going to do TRE. I think it's traumatic release.
That's the shaking one, right?
Yes,
Where
that's the shaking.
and you shake, you lay there, they walk you through the shaking like dogs shake, and that's where the study was found,
exactly.
right?
So it's funny because I was just talking to a friend of mine who's also doing a lot of her own work. And there's a course that and a practitioner that I found online, and I was like, let's do it, and we can kind of be our, share our stuff together and be our accountability partners.
Yeah.
So it's all so good because you can talk, but really trauma doesn't go away just by talking about it. Like we need extra extra support, like whatever's in our body that we don't even know. Like that memory of my right hand, I hadn't thought about that in 25 years.
Yeah.
And it came out like so matter of fact. And like, I didn't even need a second to think about it. It was right there at the surface.
Which is
And so,
crazy.
yeah, so powerful. So yeah, there are different modalities that are really powerful and really effective. And, you know, yeah, we're not stuck in these places of toxicity. Like once we get to the point that we're just like, okay, yeah, I want something different.
Yeah.
It's out there.
It is. And it's like all these opportunities and things, appointments open up and you find like, see an ad for something that you didn't realize. Like, I think I saw an ad about the somatic stuff like 6 months ago or a year ago. And I was like, what's this? And like clicked on it. Then I'm like, oh my God, it was like really interesting to me. There were no practitioners last year where I am locally at the time, but I think there are a few today. I just, I like that you said that you can't talk through trauma, because I think so many times people refer therapy and like I said, I've got nothing but love for therapists. I have therapists my entire life since I was 9 years old. I've been in therapy like on and off. So I know that it helps in some regard, but we're really releasing some of this stuff and getting it out. I've also like done some shamanic healing where they do the cord cutting, and that to me, I mean, I have to go back. It only lasts like a certain amount of time till I feel like I cloud my chakra again. But like that even is so enlightening to go through an experience like that. I did this. I was doing an interview the other day and it was really bizarre. She's a breathwork instructor and meditation and yoga and stuff. And I was talking to her and she did like this 10 breath sequence. And in my mind, when I think about breath work, I'm like 5-5-7, like breathe in for 5, hold for 5, release for 5. And this was like this like rhythmic breathing, which I had never done. And I was like panicking because I'm like, I can't keep doing this. And I was like, I felt like I was choking, and she just said, just keep breathing through it. Just, you'll be fine. Just, you're going to push through it. Like she's on the other end. And I'm like looking at her. I'm like, I don't care if this is for my podcast. I can't do this. Like something's going on.
Yeah.
And so after I felt this like release, because every healer that I have ever seen is always like, oh, your throat chakra is like shot, like your throat, you are so closed off, get it out, whatever it is, get it out. It's like locked up. And so it's funny because that's the first place with this breathing thing that it was like, I mean, I thought I was going to like, my throat was so dry, like I needed water, or it felt like it was like burning. And it's only 10 breaths. I mean, this was a matter of like 15 seconds, right?
Wow. Yeah.
So now I'm like the breathing and everything that your body holds onto and the places that it holds onto it is really mind blowing to me. And the fact that we are finally, as a culture on the Western world, is starting to like come around to fully healing a person, because mental health is so important and you need the therapy, but you also need someone to say like, sometimes you don't need to talk about what you've gone through. Your body knows it. So let's find these ways that work to get you out of it without having to numb it with a million other things.
Yeah. Well, and that's it. It's releasing the trauma and retraining your body that you're safe, because when you've experienced a place of being unsafe, your body goes into like that fight or flight or freeze, or whichever response is your flavor, and it doesn't know how to get out of it, and and then it just thinks, okay, this is how we move forward in life. And so, completely needs to release it. I've done quite a bit of breath work as well. And like 1 hour sessions of the breathing. And I know what you're talking about. Like for me, it wasn't, I did have the dryness, but that like the whole idea of doing this deep breathing, I felt like I was going to hyperventilate.
Yeah. That's what I felt like we were doing. I'm like, why are we doing this?
Yeah. And same thing, like the practitioner was just like, you're safe, you're okay. This is what to expect. Like, yes, you will feel tingly, and that's okay. And I remember like, her whole, like, she was kind of behind me. I was lying on my back and she just had her hands like pressing on my shoulders to to ground me. And she was just like, she was whispering, you're safe, you're safe. And I'm breathing and I'm sobbing. Like all of a sudden, like it comes out and boom, but then it's out and it's like, oh, like I feel so light. Like, you don't know how heavy it is until you let it go.
Yeah.
And it's like, wow. And, and then of course, like, it's not a one-time thing, you go back, but it's wonderful work. And like every little piece of that finding, and, I've also done some of the shamanic work and the cord cutting and, all of these little, different ways of doing it. It's, coming at it from a different angle, and they all help.
Yeah. Yeah. And they all they're choices, right?
Yes.
So when you make the choice to let go of toxicity and not allow it in your life, you make a choice to look into and do whatever you need to do, whether it's 3 different therapists in 1 week or, 6 different things in a week. I don't, who knows if you've been through something that's 10 times worse than what we're discussing, whatever it takes to get you out of it. Because when you come out of those experiences, when you come out of the fog of the shame that you've, like, I call it the shame veil, like you've just been living with it your whole life. Like you're never have clear vision. You never see yourself clearly. And when you pull that off, it's like, holy shit, the world is so colorful. Like when it's like going from like black and like Wizard of Oz, like from black and white into Technicolor, like, oh my God, I had no idea. And I like love my life. And, there's no more like shoulding on yourself. Why can't I be this? I should be doing this. I should have done that. Should this. And, when you have resilience, when you are resilient, as you have been, obviously, I mean, it's incredible, just the stuff you've gone through and the stuff that you go through to protect it, your secrets,
Yeah.
But when you have the will and the determination to heal, that's what happens. I mean, really, you just have to be determined, because your body and your mind will tell you, at least in my experience, like, you don't need this anymore. You're good. You're happy. You're,
Right. And that's again, like just settling for less than you deserve. Just like, don't ask for more. Like,
you're not worth more, Brooke.
Right,
come on.
right.
I mean,
Like,
that's what I tell myself, like it is, but we're meant for more. And I think the other piece is people seem to think that we have to, I don't know where this came about, like medieval times or when they had, or like Victorian times when they didn't have the luxuries that we do, but like life is not meant to be lived hard. It isn't supposed to be so hard. We make it hard. Like I'm a recovering alcoholic. So like a part of the 12-step program I'm in is like, it's a simple program for complex people. We like try to like make everything more difficult than it needs to be, but that's what we as humans, we do. Like somebody told my great grandmother or somebody beyond her said, oh, life's hard. It's just so hard. And like, we're conditioned to think that if we're not wearing ourselves down working 80 hours a week at a financial company that pays good, but we hate. And it's like going in exhausted every day, like suiting up for battle to go to work, because we should be working at corporate America and providing for our kids. And, it's just interesting to me, once you embrace the choice to get rid of toxic stuff and people, how easy life becomes. It becomes so easy to sometimes I have to be like, wait a minute, is this real? Like,
pinch yourself.
That shouldn't have come that easily,
And then it's like, oh wait, yes, it should have. Of course it's easy.
Because I'm worth it.
Exactly. And that's like what you were talking about, shoulding all over ourselves. Like when you think about it, it's all these shoulds is based on expectations of like, what will other people think? And even the ideas of us not being worthy, these stories, like my stories came from my parents. Most of our stories came from somebody else, and we adopted it as our own without questioning it.
Yep.
And when you actually think about like, okay, well, I'm telling myself I'm not worthy. I'm not, think about where it came from and then look at the person it came from, because most of the time they're really not healthy. And like, and this is what I say to my clients, like, do you really want to be taking advice and living your life based on what they think? And then it's like,
No.
oh, now that you put it that way, like, hell no. But we don't question it. And so this is it. It's really like questioning those thoughts and questioning those beliefs and the shoulds of like, I should be, really, is that true? Like, should you be? Well, if you should, then why aren't like, then you really would have been doing it by now.
Yeah,
Because,
for sure.
and it's, and it's a lot of questioning to come to like, well, what's your own truth? Because when you start looking at that, then you realize like, oh, actually, I don't believe that story. And that's so much more empowering as well.
Yeah. Or actually, I don't need to take over my dad's company.
Right.
Like, or my family business, or my, I don't need to obligatory watch my sister's kids every day. Like,
Right.
These are the things.
Or marry that guy because I was dating him for 5 years.
Right.
Like I spent a lot of time making this mistake.
Well,
like,
yeah. Well,
you can change your mind.
You know how many clients I have that say like, it's been a lot of years I've been putting. I'm like, so?
Right. So
you want to live another 15 years going through the same? I mean, because just because that doesn't mean that's what you deserve. And you certainly, you're here. You've signed up for coaching. You clearly want different choices. The wheels are in motion. So let's get rid of it. Dead weight.
Totally. And I get it. Like, a lot of my clients too will come to, say like, yeah, but it's that fear of the unknown. It's scary. And I was in that place too. And it's like, the truth is the unknown is way less scary and way easier than the life that you've been living. Like, it doesn't get harder. Like, yes, in the beginning, like opening up your stuff is not fun. But the truth is, like, it's like ripping off a Band-Aid. It's like, okay, and then it's done. And it's like, you've uncovered that and you've unpacked it, but then life gets easier and easier and easier as you go along.
Yeah.
And so, like it's, you don't know it because you've never experienced peace and freedom, but really that's what's on the other side of it. It's like, we all deserve to have that.
Yeah, we do. And that's why I started putting together affirmations and really going into using affirmations and recording. I would audio record myself, not just other people, just audio record myself, just telling myself like, you are worthy, you are worth it.
Yeah.
And that's how I came up with my 21-day like confidence challenge, because I put so much effort into myself and I'm like, well, I feel so free. Like when I was done with it, like I feel so much freer and so deserving of all these good things. Well, it can't just be, but it's because I decided to make a choice to like literally push everything into my subconscious that was like, I deserve this. I am worthy. Step out of your comfort zone, keep going, and moving through. And it's changed my life because it gave me a little bit of confidence every day to the point where I was like, oh, well, here, I feel like I can handle this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also like, the mindset and the affirmations and telling ourselves is amazing. And it's also about the actions that we take. It's like, if you want to be proud of yourself and feel that you have value and worth and, that you're worthy of love, make choices that reflect that.
Yeah.
Because often we don't do that. So when we stay in that relationship that is destroying us, we then hate ourselves more because we're staying in it.
Yep.
But making these, and it doesn't have to start with like breaking up with the guy. It can start with little things, but making those choices, like a small one every day that you're proud of like, I want to say no, and when your pattern is like, well, I'm going to say yes anyways. Don't say yes that one time because you're going to be so proud of yourself that you didn't. That motivates the next one. And it's the little actions that you take where you keep like going like, hey, good job.
Yeah.
They build on each other and then that becomes the new normal.
Yep. couldn't have said it better myself, because it's very important to like take those small steps. And when you do, you put the wheel in motion to move forward and grow. I mean, you know, we all second guess ourselves. We all feel imposter syndrome at some point or another. But it's just doing one small thing each day that pushes you like, oh my God, I got that done, or I accomplished it, or I no longer am, you know, trying to please this person, or I said no to my boss, or whatever simple little thing. That's the thing, is people think it's got to be this monumental thing, like, oh, I signed up for the $8,000 Tony Robbins so that I can change my whole life. That's great. It's on my bucket list too. But like, you can get the same shift right now where you're at in your chaos just by saying no to one person, just by changing one sentence for one day for you to go, wow, I did it. And it wasn't that hard. You know, that's how change happens. So I could see it. I appreciate that you came on today. I really I'm in awe of your whole story. I think
thank you.
Just I know if anybody, you know, looks up Michelle Anhang on podcasts, you'll see the episodes that she's been on during Mental Health Awareness Month. And I know that we only touched base on that, but you can go listen to other podcasts that she's been a guest on, because her story is so powerful, and it is exactly what's wrong with the world, with the stigma and the shame that we carry because of an illness that we can't see. And her bravery and resilience in the way that she just keeps plugging along and improving the world and healing the world one client at a time is super impressive. So I'm really glad that you came on today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. This was so much fun.
We'll have to do it again.
Yes, definitely. I'd love to.
All right. Thanks. See you guys next week. Thank you for listening to the Desperately Seeking Self podcast. Did you love this episode? Then head on over to iTunes to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. It's very much appreciated. Also check out innovativecoachbrooke.com to join in on the conversation, access show notes, and discover all the awesome free content. And don't forget to join us next week for another episode. Thanks for tuning in.